Well, we're on an interesting chapter this week. You're kind of in for a little bit of a break in that this chapter is a little bit shorter, and we'll be able to sum it up a little bit. Of course, you've already done your, if you haven't already done it, you're in the process of doing your practice problems for this chapter. But this chapter is on water, electrolytes, and acid-base balance. And so I want to come back and I want to mention, and we'll mention on your test as well, you'll need to know this term, but homeostasis is the key. Homeostasis, homeo meaning same within. Homeostasis is a balance, the same in and same out. Okay, so what we're looking at here, once again, we have to have a homeostasis balance of water intake and outtake. In other words, we actually have to take in, if we lose a certain amount of water, then we got to gain more water. If we gain more water, then we got to lose more water. So homeostasis, this balance, same intake, same outtake. But we have the same with electrolytes. We have to have a homeostasis of the electrolyte intake and the electrolyte outtake. And we have to have the same homeostasis of pH. And when we talk about homeostasis of pH, from your basic chemistry, if you've never had basic chemistry, I'd love to have you in class. We teach that whole class. But you know from your chemistry that pH 7 is neutral. Anything less than pH 7 is an acid or acidic. And anything higher than pH 7 is a base. And pH is actually for a Latin term, meaning the hydrogen ion concentration. So basically we say it's capital H plus. It's an hydrogen ion concentration. And acids give off hydrogen ions, okay, and bases give off hydroxide ions, which is OH minus. So you need to know that acids are H plus and bases are OH minus. Make myself a note as we're making the test there, okay. So acids give off the H plus hydrogen ion concentrations, and bases give off the hydroxide or OH minus ions. Okay, so that being said, let's talk about water a little bit. Water intake is critical to the human body. We need water. We talked about it in the digestive system. We talked about how we've got this 8-foot alimentary canal that we have to flush down. We have to put water in. Okay. Every cell in your body needs water to have turgor pressure and to be able to maintain. We have water that starts. We talked about a lot of things. We break down fats. We break down sugars. We have water breakdown in our digestive system. So the average water intake is 2,500 milliliters per day. Now that sounds like quite a bit. That's 2.5 liters of water per day. And they say 8-ounce glasses of water is a good recommended consumption of water. But the average intake, according to your text, is 2,500 milliliters per day. Now, this doesn't always come from drinking water. Some of this is 60%. I'm gonna quiz you on these on your test. So, water intake, the average person, 2,500 milliliters per day. 60% of that is from drinking water and other beverages. So it might be juices, might be milks, different things. Now you got to realize that on these beverages, when you drink Coke and you drink Cokes or Dr. Peppers or whatever, and you break that down, you get some water, but you've got all this glucose and everything else breaking down. So we say 60% of that drinking water and other beverages. You need to realize if you're going to figure 2,500 milliliters, so you're like, okay, well that's no problem. I'll just drink my 2-liter Coke every day. Okay, all right. I'll just drink my 2-liter Dr. Pepper every day. Then that's not gonna be 100% water, and you have to figure out what it breaks down. So we need to break it down into pure water. So 60% is from drinking water and other beverages. 30% is from moist foods, okay? By moist foods, we mean fruits and vegetables and everything that has water in it. And then 10% is from water metabolism. That means that water is actually made in the body. For example, even in respiration, when we take in oxygen in it, and it mixes with, when we actually make some water in our body, we make some condensation, and so the 2,500 milliliters of water per day is made up of 60% drinking water and other beverages, 30% moist foods, and 10% water metabolism in the body. Now, if you're not getting enough water, then it's kind of interesting because we have a thirst center in the brain that's located in the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus has a thirst center that says, "Hey, you know what? We need to take in more. We need to take in more water." So we actually have a thirst center of the brain in the hypothalamus. So here's this homeostasis balancing out the water. Water has lots of functions, and the problem that we have with water is we also release water not only through urine, but we also release water through sweat. As you had in your practice problems, you realize that about 6% of all the water that we give off in the form of sweat. And so we're giving off water all the time. So if you're in an area where you're sweating more and you're giving off more water, and we're going to learn that that's also true with electrolytes, okay, then you got to take in more water. So there's two things that regulate water intake. There's that thirst center in the hypothalamus, and also the kidneys also regulate. The kidneys say, okay, they send out. We talked about in the last chapter, aldosterone, and that's a hormone that actually causes us to want to take in more water. So our body is telling us, yeah, we need to take in more water. And the second thing that we have are the electrolytes. Now, electrolytes are charged particles, okay? Now, why do we need electrolytes? We need electrolytes so that the nerves can connect. We have this neuron that we talked about earlier, and we come off, and we have these synapses areas that have dendrites, and this electrolyte is part of this connector that causes these to be able to make a connection. So when we have electrolytes, we talk about most of our electrolytes are positively charged ions. Now, a positively charged ion is called a cation, C-A-T-I-O-N. So you can remember that because positively charged ions are called cations. Okay, so it's in a different pronunciation. We have cations is kind of an American. Cations, C-A-T-I-O-N-S, cations is another pronunciation, so you may hear that. But in this particular deal, we can remember cations because cats have paws, okay? So that's kind of how I remember that they're positively charged. Cations are positively charged ions. Now, the main three positively charged cations or cations, okay, either pronunciation is used, are the main three cations are sodium, potassium, and calcium. So these are the main electrolytes in the body. We have a sodium-potassium pump we talked about in the last chapter. Now, of those three, sodium, potassium, and calcium, sodium makes up 90% of all the cations in the electrolyte system. Okay. Now what do they do? Okay, what does sodium do? Well, sodium it functions in nerve cell function, which means exactly what we're talking about, causes nerves to fire. And as that happens, it also causes muscle contraction. Now, remember we talked about this earlier when we studied the neurons, okay? That the brains, we receive a stimulus and the brain sends this impulse to the muscles. And remember that the muscles just do one of two things. They either contract or they relax. They either contract or they relax. So what happens in sodium, and we even talked about this a little bit earlier, sodium causes muscle contraction. Sodium causes muscle contraction, all right? Now what does potassium do? Potassium maintains the resting potential of nerves and cardiac cells and muscles. So sodium causes the contraction, potassium causes the resting or the relaxation of the muscle cell. So we send that information there. So we say to ourselves, why do we get cramps? And we talk about sodium, we talk about potassium, but the sodium causes the contraction and potassium causes the relaxation. Why do we hear people say, well, I might eat bananas if I'm having cramps and stuff? It's because that muscle is contracted and that muscle is so tight that it doesn't relax, and the potassium actually relaxes that muscle. So when we talk about electrolytes, okay, once again, talking about cations, okay, positively charged ions, and they're made up of sodium, potassium, and calcium. Sodium is 90% of the cations, and sodium is responsible for the nerve cell functions and muscle contraction, and potassium maintains a resting potential in those nerve and cardiac cells and muscle cells. Now, when we talk about pH, okay, once again, I was telling you earlier, pH of 7 is neutral, below 7 is an acid, above 7 is a base. We have chemical buffers. Chemical buffers resist a change in pH, keeping our body, once again, to have a homeostasis of pH. Now, the biggest pH we have in our body is in our blood. The pH of blood is 7.35 to 7.45. If our blood gets below pH of 7.35, then we say we're in acidosis, okay? And that's a problem, okay? We go into an acidosis phase, and that causes our whole body to begin to change things, to get back in homeostasis, to get that back. If it goes above 7.45, then it's called alkalosis. And once again, that comes from the word alkaline, and the other one comes from the word acidic. So below 7.35, acidosis; above 7.45, alkalosis. And then our body goes into emergency mode, okay? Goes into emergency mode, and then we begin to try to adjust that pH. So once again, just a quick overview of the homeostasis. And we talked just briefly about water, briefly about electrolytes, briefly about chemical buffers. And once again, the things that I've given you are the standards that you need to know for this. There's lots of other things, so take your time as you're going through the chapter. Take your time as you're looking at intercellular fluids, extracellular fluids, as you're answering the questions. Once again, I know there's a lot of questions in every chapter, but we just want to make sure that you're getting everything you need. Be sure that's just a one video test, so it's not too long, but be sure and pay attention. Everything's going to be on the test. But that's a quick overview of water, electrolytes, and acids and bases. So I'll see you at the next chapter.